So, we're going to start today by talking about the Republicans took the House. Unfortunately, they have it by the slimmest of margins. They'll probably they probably won't pick up many more seats, and even if they do, it'll be so few that it won't actually matter anyway. So, it is official as of today, which is Wednesday, the November 16th. The Senate is going to be controlled by the Democrats, the presidency controlled by the Democrats, and the House controlled by the Republicans, which means that very likely ain't shit gonna happen in the next 2 years except annoying investigations, a lot of bickering, and a lot of bloviating about stuff that doesn't matter. So that's that. It's not really a bad thing. It's not really a good thing. It's just okay. It is what it is, you know. But in other news, of like he said he was going to be fair, Trump has announced that he is running for president again. And he did it with a speech that's not typical of Trump. I've been catching a little bit of his speech here and there throughout the day, and it's it's not it's not as alive as it normally is. He's normally a lot louder, a lot brasher, a lot more like into playing off the crowd, and he's just not. It's like his head's not in the game for this speech. But let's watch a little bit of it.
America's comeback starts right now. 2 years ago, when I left office, the United States stood ready for its golden age. Our nation was at the pinnacle of power, prosperity, and prestige, towering above all rivals, vanquishing all enemies, and striding into the future, confident and so strong. In 4 short years, everybody was doing great. Men, women, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, everybody.
Okay, so two things. One, you notice the lack of energy. It's like the guy apparently Diet Coke is no longer shipping Diet Coke to Trump anymore. That was his drink of choice to pep him up in during the day. Apparently, I don't know if this is like 100% accurate or not, but when he was in office, there were stories about him like having a Diet Coke guy. Again, I don't know if this is true. I just find it funny that Trump would have a guy whose entire job it was to make sure he had a Diet Coke on hand whenever Trump wanted it. Um, so yeah. Now to be fair, if I could have some, if I had a job where I could have somebody just like hand me like a small bottle of pineapple juice because I love pineapple juice. Yeah, I'd fucking do it. Who wouldn't do that? Like if you could, you know you would. You know you would have somebody standing there just to hand you that one thing that like juices you up a little bit. No pun intended. Uh, I mean, come on. We all know we'd do it. And I can't really blame Trump for if it's true. If it's true that he did that, I can't really blame him for it because we would all do that. And then the other thing is this is just something I noticed about Trump is the way he says America. I don't know if he's doing it on purpose, but he doesn't. It's America, a mare, like mare, like a horse or Mary, right? And he says America. Here, let's go back just a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean.
Americans, Asian Americans,
See, Americans,
Hispanic Americans,
Americans.
everybody was thriving like never before.
Now, getting to the substance. It's not. He doesn't. Trump doesn't really speak with any substance. Everything he says is just riffs off the top of his head, and it's clear how little he knows about things when he speaks. But he's like, yeah, 4 years ago, which 4 years, what he didn't, either he means 4 years ago Biden got elected, in which case it was actually 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, meaning when he took office, which was actually 6 years ago. So when he says 4 years ago, he means one of those two things, but the actual timeline is right in the middle of his presidency. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, he just riffs, he just says shit, and there's no rhyme or reason to what he says. Like, I will never be somebody who will look you in the face and be like, Biden is always coherent. That dude sometimes has a hard time spitting out a sentence. I hear he had a speech disorder when he was younger, and it's probably coming back to get him now that he's in his older years. But I will never be a person who's like, yeah, fucking Joe Biden speaks perfectly fine. Like sometimes he's on it. Sometimes he takes his Adderall and he's like he's on it. But sometimes he talks and it's like, bro, like, just take a second, think about what you're about to say. Because you are stumbling all over the place. But he's stumbling over his words, he's stumbling over his thoughts, whereas Trump stumbles over like logic constantly. Like, at least with Joe Biden, when he speaks, you can sort of figure out the point of what it is he's trying to say, even when he's really poorly spitting his words out. You can kind of be like, oh, okay, he's talking about, he's talking about how expensive drugs are and how we need to take care of that. He's talking about how he will not let Russia, bully the world by using their nuclear arsenal as a threat. Like, you can hear, like, the thought is there, and when Trump speaks, it's just a stream of nonsense constantly. Like, it's words. He doesn't stumble over his words, but the words don't mean anything. Like, when you listen to a Trump speech, we're going to do it here, really try to figure out what this dude is saying. And 9 times out of 10, it's completely incoherent. It makes no fucking sense. So, continuing.
There was never a time like this. We turned the page on decades of globalist sellouts and one-sided trade deals, lifted millions out of poverty, and together we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. When the virus hit our shores, I took decisive action and saved lives and the U.S. economy. And by October of the same year, America was...
Okay. Claiming that Trump, of all people, took decisive action during the pandemic and saved lives is borderline laughable, because he was dragged kicking and screaming into doing something about COVID. Now, I will give the administration credit, the people behind Trump, that they actually did try to do some stuff. Did they do enough? Absolutely not. But did they try to do some stuff? Sure. But that was them. That was not Trump. You cannot look me in the face with everything that he said about COVID and everything he said about it being fake. It's like the flu. It's the China virus. Like, all that stuff to downplay the severity of COVID. That he cannot claim that he saved lives during COVID. Maybe his administration did some stuff that helped out, but Trump himself was like the thorn in the side of anybody trying to get anything done. Honestly, I'm amazed Anthony Fauci made it through the Trump administration. I'm just amazed that happened. I don't know how that got through the cracks. There must just not have been anybody to replace him, and the people around Trump must have told him, like, hey, there is nobody else. This guy is the guy. But who knows? But that's laughable for him to say that.
Roaring back with the #1 fastest economic recovery ever recorded. How about that?
Okay, most of the economic recovery that happened under Biden's Biden's presidency. Slip of the tongue there. Biden's presidency. Most of the economic recovery that happened under Biden. Now, I'm a big proponent of the president of the United States doesn't have that much effect on the economy at large. You can do some things. You can try to like stave the bleeding or try to prevent collapses, but ultimately the United States economy and most, in fact, all liberal democracies in the world are mainly driven by the feelings of the people in that economy. So if you feel good and you have some money in your pocket, you're going to go spend money. If you don't have any money and you feel good, you're not going to spend money. If you have money and you feel bad, you're not going to spend money. So like regardless of what the president does, those realities will drive economic growth or stagnation or decline in a liberal democracy. It's, do people have money to spend, and are they confident enough in the economy to spend the money? And under Trump during COVID, it was really bad. When COVID hit, there was nothing coming from the White House, nothing coming from the government to help sort of like stave off the bleeding of confidence from the economy. And then once the stimulus kicked in, people had the money, but they didn't have the confidence. So they took advantage of the low prices on things at the time because there were sales on all kinds of shit right when COVID hit. Everything got so cheap right as COVID got hit. So when the stimulus got injected, people spent some money at the time, and that sort of like gave a jolt. Then they started bailing out. Then the government started bailing out the stock market, which sort of kept that afloat all the way through COVID because it was dropping there quick when COVID hit. And then the government stepped in and started helping out with stuff. But the job losses were ridiculous under Trump, and that was strictly a product of his policy. We didn't have to kick people onto unemployment. We could have kept people attached to their jobs. That's what Germany did. That's what I believe Australia did, the same thing, where instead of people going home from lockdowns and basically getting kicked onto the unemployment system to cover in the loss in income, they said, hey, all the employers, just send your people home. We'll write you a check for 80% of their pay, and you just give them that. And that way they stay attached to their job. They stay attached to their job with their benefits and their earned vacation time. I'm not entirely sure how all that works in those countries, but all the stuff that comes along with being part of a company and being part of a company long term, you get to keep all of that because you're still an employee. You're just being paid by the government to stay home. And then when it was no longer required to stay home, the government stopped paying you and you just went back to work. Like lots of other countries did this, but because Trump, his policy that he chose to push during COVID involved kicking people onto unemployment, we had a massive realignment of who works where for what money, who wants to do what job, what people are willing to put up with for a job. Like all that stuff got realigned in the United States because people just lost their job. They didn't have to just go home for 2 weeks. They lost their job, and then when everything opened back up, they had to go find a job again. And that was very, very traumatic for the economy at large. And so so he created that problem that Biden's economy, let's say Biden's economy, knowing full well that he doesn't have that much effect on it, but he's president during this time. Biden's economy has had to like dig itself out of that hole. And so unemployment at this point under Biden is the lowest it's been in like 50 years. And it's because the economy is not particularly well controlled by the president. The president doesn't have a lot of control over it. All the president can do is try to inject some confidence and maybe some cash into the economy, but ultimately it's the behavior of the people that do it. So it always bothers me when politicians take credit for this because Obama got the economy back on track, and if you look at the graph line, I say Obama. Under Obama, the economy got back on track, and if you look at the trajectory of growth going from 2016 into Trump's presidency, the the direction of the line doesn't change. It continues to go up at the exact same rate it was going up under Obama. His tax cuts, his business-friendly attitude, the regulations that he pulled back from the EPA while he was in office, none of those things affected the trajectory of that line. It just kept going. And then COVID hit, and bam, goes, and then right back up because the government starts spending money again. Or starts spending money to prop it up. And so, like, he's taken credit for things that he didn't have any control over, and people eat it up. People eat it up, and it's so annoying. But anyway.
All of the incoming administration, and all they had to do was just sit back and watch. Inflation was non-existent. Our southern border was by far the strongest ever.
Okay, inflation was actually during the beginning of COVID, we were in a deflationary period. Things were getting cheaper. And if you know anything about economics, deflation is actually worse than inflation. Inflation, things getting more expensive over time, still preserves the relationship between buying an asset and expecting that asset to gain value in the end. So it still makes sense to buy a business during a time of inflation. It still makes sense to buy a house during a time of inflation, financially speaking. But in deflationary period, as things get cheaper, it no longer makes sense to buy assets. You buy a house, and then the house is worth less because the house of prices decreases when in deflationary area. You buy a TV now, but you buy a TV now and it costs $1,000, but in 3 months it's going to cost $800. Well, you're not going to buy the fucking TV now. So, like, a deflationary spiral limits growth in the economy a lot more than an inflationary spiral, as long as that inflationary spiral doesn't get so bad that people can't afford things anymore. They're both bad when they're extreme, but deflation is worse for the type of economy that we have. So, like, when he left office, we were in a deflationary period. The stock market was still inflating, but prices on goods were dropping. Gas was like so fucking cheap because nobody was buying gas, so the supply of oil on the market was massive relative to the demand. And he's taking credit for all of this, like he did something. Like, he didn't do anything. And also, the economy wasn't, the inflation wasn't bad because it was a deflationary period, which is worse. So, whatever. And then him saying the southern border is the most secure it has ever been is also at best a hyperbole and at worst a lie, because Obama was setting deportation records. Biden has kept in place the Trump era policy of turning people away at the border because COVID is an emergency. Deportations have gone up. The amount of people being directly deported upon capture at the border has gone up. Like, all this stuff is higher now than it was when Trump was in office because more people are trying to cross the border as the economy in the United States picks back up, and the economy in Central American countries and South America does not improve as quickly, and in some places it's actually getting worse right now. The more people are going to come to the United States. They're going to try to go where the opportunity is. And, as much shit as I give the United States, I will never be one of those people that says it's been unsuccessful in its endeavors. The United States is the richest country in the history of the world, with the most power, the largest military, the greatest amount of sway. And people know that. So they try to come here. And when things get really bad other places, they come here. So if Biden wasn't doing his job, he wouldn't be apprehending record numbers of people coming over the border. And that's not his fault. It's also not Trump's fault. It's not Obama's fault. Well, U.S. policy sort of dictates the trajectory of the American side of the world to a pretty large extent. So it is kind of their fault, but in an indirect kind of way. But anyway.
And because the border was so tight, drugs were coming into our country at the lowest level in many, many years. Importantly, after decades of rising energy costs, the United States had finally attained the impossible dream of American energy independence.
And energy independence is another bullshit line that people put out there because the United States produces enough oil and enough energy to power the entire United States without having to rely on the global market at all. The reason why we do rely on the global market is for two reasons. One, it makes sure that we maintain power in other parts of the world that are reliant upon American oil. We wouldn't be able to control the price of oil in other countries nearly as effectively if we didn't sell our oil on the market. Why is that important? Well, we do a lot of trade with Europe. We do a lot of trade with China. We do a lot of trade with Japan. We do a lot of trade with South America. If we weren't trading oil on the international market, then when something disrupts the international market supply of oil, all the prices of gasoline in all those countries and the price to heating homes would skyrocket. And there would be no way for the U.S. to intervene into that to try to stabilize it. And when prices skyrocket over there, prices go up over here. Trade deals fall apart. Money is lost. The economy slows down if other countries do it. So the United States selling our oil on the world market is a stabilizing factor. And we wield that weapon, for lack of a better term, pretty effectively on the world stage. The United States is really good at smoothing out a lot of the ups and downs that would normally come from the world market. And we wouldn't be able to do that if we kept all of our oil in the United States. So we don't. We send some of it overseas and we buy some from overseas. But this thought that we're not energy independent is bullshit. If the United States had no interest in the rest of the world, we could power the entire United States, no fucking problem, on what we make now. No problem. We've got plenty of land, plenty of oil, plenty of sunshine, plenty of wind, plenty of nuclear capability. The United States can do it on our own. We choose not to help the rest of the world because we're connected to the rest of the world. So,
which soon would have turned into energy dominance.
We also already dominate because of what I just said. Okay, so anyway, I'm not going to keep going through this. I paused a lot there in 3 minutes and 10 seconds. I apologize. Point being, Trump spouts a lot of nonsense. He's running for president, and this speech was ridiculous. I watched quite a bit of it. It's full of just random throw shit at the wall stuff that doesn't even make any sense. But anyway, so what's going to happen now that he's running? I really think he'll lose no matter what. He's become kind of toxic, but to independents and Democrats, and you need to pull independents to win the presidency. So he's got his base of support on the Republican Party, but I really think that's all he'll get. Now the question is that enough to get him through the primary? Because right now people are starting to line up behind DeSantis, and he's arguably more dangerous because he's a much smarter man. He's a much less toxic personality, and he really knows how to play the culture war politics game in a directed manner instead of the way Trump just sort of like throws shit at the wall and sees what sticks. And DeSantis has aspirations to do all of the bad, anti-democracy things that Trump tried to do, but currently has the backing, the smarts, and the age to pull it off. DeSantis is only like 44 years old. So, oddly enough, I'm kind of in the camp that Trump running for office again might actually be a good thing, because there's going to be a section of the Republican Party that no matter what DeSantis does, they're going to vote for Trump. And if it's enough to get Trump through the primary, he will more than likely lose to just about anybody on the Democratic field except maybe Kamala Harris. He'll certainly lose to Joe Biden again, especially if Joe Biden keeps up his string of doing like decent executive orders and pushing for halfway decent legislation. Even if he doesn't get it passed, I think the American people realize at this point that, not much is probably going to get done now that the Republicans control the House. But if Biden publicly pushes for shit and lays the blame squarely and honestly at the feet of the Republicans for not helping him do anything, that might be a winning strategy. So, anyway, I think Trump's going to lose. If he'll either lose in the primary or he'll definitely lose in the general election. But, it might end up being a good thing for the country that Trump is running because he may clear the field of all the more effective people that are just less personality. Um, and we'll have to see what happens. I'm not looking forward to having to hear about this guy's stupid face for another 2 years at least. But you know, ultimately, the pain and suffering we will all feel from having to listen to him try to string a sentence together might be worth it if we can keep DeSantis out of office. But we'll see. So let's move on, shall we? Ooh, that's a weird. I forget how weird he drinks water. Look at this. Actually, that one wasn't weird. I remember seeing him like. That one wasn't too bad. I remember seeing Trump like, sort of like he took like a drink and went, and I was like, bro, why are you so weird?